Welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari Sanko for the second Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're blessed to always be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport, and we appreciate some new ratings and reviews and all of that stuff, subscribers on YouTube. We will read some of those, catch up on those next week. We have a very special guest this week, and so we want to get right into it. The host of Locked On Pistons. This guy is talking about the Pistons every single day, at least during the week, which is still a lot. 5 days a week, he's bringing you Pistons content. Been doing it for a minute. One of the originals, Ku Khahil. Ku, welcome to the Pistons Pulse.
Appreciate you guys having me. I hope to have a lot of fun on here.
Yeah, we usually have fun. I feel like we usually have fun, Bryce. I feel like we have not had a non-fun episode yet, so hopefully we can keep that going. We have a pretty fun segment 3 coming up. I know that'll be fun.
We either have fun or it's a therapy session for whoever tunes in live or listens on the pod. And we just had a game on Sunday afternoon that I guess we have some stuff to dive into. So cool. There's no reason to wait around. Let's just get right into it, and then we'll build out from there. I definitely want to get your thoughts on Ausar because I know that was a player you were really high on even before the Pistons selected him. So I'm interested to get your thoughts on how he's looked and expectations and all of that, the trade deadline, everything. But let's start with the game on Sunday. Let's start at the end, unfortunately. Cade Cunningham shoots with 10 seconds left, tie game. Monty Williams doesn't call a timeout. Just what were you thinking whenever that all happened? And I don't want to say place blame, but just what were your thoughts?
So when they initially got the stop, my first reaction was, Evan Fournier, please slow down. I thought for a second he was going to try to force a layup at the rim or try to force a pass. The Pistons over the last 2 weeks, they've had some guys like Fontecchio's done it a few times. Stu's done it a few times where they have momentum swing their way, and then those guys try to handle it in transition and they turn the ball over and they just 180s it. So that was the first thing I was thinking. I was like, just slow down, wait for Cade to get up the floor. And then when Cade got up the floor and he got it, I looked at the clock when he caught the ball and I was like, okay, just don't dribble yet. Because once you put the ball on the ground, the defender's going to start to harass you and you're going to get rushed. It's going to rush you. And he put the ball on the ground at 13 seconds left. I was like, oh my God, please please take the last shot. But he ended up taking the shot, I think at exactly 10 seconds left, the way he let go of the shot. And then obviously Miami ended up being able to come back down and hit that game-winning 3 from Bam, which by the way is just crazy, only the Pistons kind of thing. I think Omari said that's Bam's 4th 3 of the year. He doesn't even take threes. It's just rough. Cade after the game, he said that, he wanted to get this up before the double came. That was my initial thought, is why he did it. He liked the matchup he had and he wanted to get it up before the double came. But even with that, it's still a bad decision. You can't take that shot that early in the shot clock. The game clock. I don't know if I know some fans care about the shot he took. I don't care about the shot he took. It's just the time he took it at. So it's rough. Jamal Murray did the same thing tonight. So, it's not just a rookie thing. Players make this mistake sometimes. So he'll learn from it. But yeah, definitely rough to see that happening in a game.
Just real quick, Omari. So looking at Bam has 3 made threes this year, guys. 3 this year. Guess when 2 of those are? In the last 2 games against the Pistons. His only other made 3 was the 6th game he played in the season back on November 6th. So it's true. I'm glad you brought that up, Ku, because it really is all the conversations around Cade. We'll talk about Monty Williams' decision or lack of decision, all of that stuff. Tony, real quick here, man. If you don't think that Cade made a bad decision, I don't know what to tell you, my guy. At the end of the day, my 10-year-old knows that you wait till the last second, that you can't give the other team a shot. So if you want us to crush Monty Williams, I get it. But Cade takes some ownership over this. What I do like, Ku, is what you brought up, hearing the double team conversation and him just wanting to take the shot made a little bit more sense why he did it, I guess. I understand why it was so early. I still think it's really, really bad process. I don't think that, it's kind of inexcusable to me. But Omari, let me get your thoughts on it. You got to interview and talk to Cade, Monty Williams about it, all of that.
Yeah, I think Cade was beating himself up over it for sure. And Bam hit. I mean, that was a wild shot. Like my angle sitting in the arena, I couldn't actually see who shot it, so I thought it was Rozier, and I was just waiting for I'm like I watched it on my laptop too, so I'm just waiting for the play to happen, and I see it's Bam, and I'm like, that was just a very Miami Heat thing to happen because it just seems like they always get those shots to fall when they play the Pistons. But yeah, I mean, he just left way too much time on the clock. I think he shot it with like 8.5 seconds left, which is enough time, for the Heat. Really, I mean, they took a really deep three, but that's enough time to get an even closer look off had they went for it. So I thought he should have got the clock down to 6 or 5 at the very least. You want them to have to make a deep heave, if anything, at the end. So again, like just something he'll learn from it. Like honestly, just think it was a brain fart. I mean, he mentioned the double team, and that logic makes sense basically in any scenario that's not the last possession of the game. It just doesn't quite hold up. I just think it was a brain fart. He was beating himself up over the game. Miami, of course, they complete the season sweep, but 3 of those games were competitive if you believe in moral wins. And it's a tough week coming up. Like they have Boston twice. That's a tough one to not get, especially when you look at just who's coming up in the next few games. It's not going to get that much easier.
I think it was tough for me too, because I was a little bit behind and I saw that the game had ended. I knew it ended in regulation because it disappeared from the top of how I watched the games. And I was like, oh, like, here's what sucks too, guys. Like the final defensive possession before the Bam 3 was awesome. Like they made all these rotations. Cade made multiple efforts. Fournier comes up with the steal. Like all of that was perfect. It's like, oh, Cade must have hit a game winner. Never in my wildest dreams did I thought the game was over in regulation because they took a shot too early and the Heat made the shot. Okay, listen, like the whole Cade conversation, it'll be talked about. People are just gonna have to agree to disagree a little bit on like the basketball, thought process behind this. Like I stand on that. Like it's inexcusable. It's not an NBA process thing. It's a basketball thing at almost any level thing. So that's where I'm at. Ku, were you surprised? And are you frustrated that there was not a timeout called? So let's go there. Like Monty Williams takes a lot of heat for a lot of things. Do you think a timeout should have been called?
No, I don't have a problem with him not taking a timeout. I understand wanting to go against the Miami Heat defense that's scrambling and not set in the half court. You take a timeout, they get to come out in their base defense. Whether it was, I don't know if they would be bold enough to come out in a zone like they were on the last play, but if they were, the zone was causing the Pistons some issues. So I don't know what they would have done. Either way, they're in their base defense. They get time to think about it, whatever. And like Cade said after the game, I know Jaquez is actually a good defender, but I know Cade said that was the matchup he wanted. You have the matchup that your best player wanted. You're getting the last shot of the game. Everyone's getting back. Everyone's kind of scrambling. I don't care about not taking a timeout at that point. I think there's things you can criticize Monty Williams for, but that would be one I would not criticize him for. And look, I know people are going to kill Cade for it, and I understand like it was a bad decision, but like these things have happened. Like I said earlier, like Jamal Murray just did it. And he's been in the NBA for 8 years. Like this is not. And I can think of other situations where guys take a shot and they leave like even 2.5 seconds left on the clock. Like just a little amount of time and a team comes down and scores. Like it's not like this is some crazy thing that never happens in the NBA. It's happened. Cade did it a little bit extreme because he did leave 10 seconds. So it's like that was it. It was a mistake for sure. But I mean, these things happen and he'll learn from it. But no, I don't really blame Monty for not taking a timeout.
I mean, the thing it's a great point. And I saw the Jamal. I haven't seen all I've seen from that game is the Kyrie Irving, game winner. Then Jamal Murray should be taking criticism as well. Like at the end of it's okay. As somebody said, it's okay to criticize these guys. Here's another thing. I didn't end up tweeting it. I kind of saved it for the pod. So I want to go back to you, Ku, and then Omari, I'll get your thought on the timeout. This doesn't change my long-term outlook or thoughts on Cade Cunningham. I don't think any different about Cade Cunningham in terms of what he can be for this team or his skill level or anything like that based on this decision. All I'm saying is it was a really bad decision that I was shocked by because it's Cade Cunningham. And I feel like he's such a high basketball feel IQ awareness player. Like that's why it surprised me so much. It doesn't change anything in terms of how I feel about him long-term. Would you say the same? Like, does this change anything for you in the grand scheme of who Cade is and what you think he can be?
And I would say too, Jamal Murray, he has the the reputation for hitting big shots too. So he probably just gets more forgiveness in that scenario just because they're the reigning champs, and we've seen Jamal Murray hit some really big shots, which the Pistons haven't quite gotten there yet. So I think when you only have 12 wins, maybe that hits a little bit tougher. But again, like to Ku's point, like I don't see that as anything that should affect anyone's opinion of Cade. I mean, he took the shot too early. Guys take a lot of shots. Sometimes the shots aren't going to be the best ones. Play again tomorrow, right?
Ku, does it change your long-term thoughts on Cade at all?
No, we got to stop living in this quick hot take environment. Like, it was one shot at the end of a game. We can't be like freaking out over. Like, this is why I want the Pistons to get to a point where they're like at least decent and like just okay. Because what happens with a team this bad is that you end up hyper analyzing literally every single play.
Mm-hmm.
And basketball is an 82 game season. It's 48 minutes of play. You can't hyper analyze every single game, every single play, every single second. That's just not how basketball is. So like. Again, Cade made a bad mistake. I'm not defending it. It was a very bad mistake, and everyone knows that I'm really high on Cade. It was a bad mistake. A wrong decision he made. But like people are, I already see a lot of people saying like Cade never delivers in the fourth. Like the final 6 minutes in this game, he had 7 points, 3 assists. On the final 7 possessions for the Pistons, he either scored or created for someone else.
Yeah.
So like, the end of play was bad. It was not the right decision. But like. Let's just calm down. Like, we don't need to like get too crazy with it. It's one play and he'll learn from it.
No, I mean, I think again, that's why it was a little bit frustrating is he had hit some big shots. I had literally typed in my notes how impactful I thought he was on the defensive possession that got them that offensive possession. And it was just like, man, this is all going to build into just a great, clutch Cade moment. And then what happened. Okay. So we all agree it was a mistake, but it's not the end of the world. We can move on. We all called it out. We talked about it. It's fine. Ku, you said you wouldn't have called a timeout. You kind of agree with Monty there. I actually agree with you. I think, and it sounded like, Omari, I'll go to you with this then. Like, Cade said they already knew they were going to go 4 low and just let Cade go to work, right? So it sounded like they had already talked what they were going to do. Why call a timeout and let the defense get set? As Ku mentioned, go zone, get the defensive players and personnel they want on the floor. To me, I was fine with them playing. Do you think differently? Just your own perspective, Omari?
No, I mean, I feel the same way. Cade said they had already decided to go 4 low the last 2 possessions. And then with that, they got a turnover on what should have been the Heat's last possession. So really up until that last shot, like the last couple of minutes really went pretty well for the Pistons. I mean, Duncan Robinson had the 4-point play that put them down 5 with 2 minutes left, and they still hit those shots down the stretch to tie it. So at that point, I think you just let the momentum roll. What Miami can do defensively. I don't see why you would want to let them get their defense set, especially when the Pistons have had issues inbounding the ball this season. So, I just think in that scenario, you just sort of embrace the chaos like it had been working for you. Cade knew what his job was, wind down the clock, get a shot, and he just took it too early. But I don't really put that on Monty as far as not calling a timeout, because then it's like one of those things where you call a timeout and it's like, oh, well, they could have got a fast break opportunity, or like, why'd you take that away from them? And it's just one of those things where either way, if it's a loss, I think you kind of nitpick all of that stuff. But up until that moment, I think everything had went in Detroit's favor. So I don't really hold that against Monty. There's probably other stuff in the game you can highlight. I mean, obviously they were down 17 at one point, so there's a lot that went wrong up until that moment. But I wouldn't have scripted the last 2 minutes any different, except for that last shot. If he had waited 2 more seconds, it's probably a different outcome.
Cool. So speaking of some decisions, one decision I think that is going overlooked now. Some people have brought up Jaden Ivey didn't play the last 18 minutes of the game. He went out about 6 minutes to go in the third quarter. Didn't come back. Fournier was obviously making some shots, doing some good things. I actually think Fournier had some good defensive plays as well. Your thoughts on Ivey not playing the final 18 minutes? Okay with the decision, not okay with the decision. What did you think with that?
Well, anything I say in regard to this won't be taken serious because I've been dubbed the Ivy hater now because
okay.
So then no one will take me serious. But I don't care. Like, people gotta decide what they want the Pistons to be doing. Are they gonna be? Do you want them to try to win this game at the end, or do you want them to prioritize development? And I know that's something that the Pistons themselves are, a little bit trying to decide between as well. But like you just said, Fournier played really well at the end of this game. Like it wasn't just the offensive end, like the defensive end. He had a few really good stops on Terry Rozier, especially the last defensive, or not the last, but the second to last defensive possession on Rozier. Like Fournier, again, I'm one of those people that would rather not see the vets out there and the reason why the Pistons win is because they're young guys. But I mean, Fournier was playing well, and the Pistons had a chance to win the game, basically what should have been at the last shot against one of the best teams, or a team that's been to the finals, 2 of the last 3 years. So, no, I don't have a problem. Like, if Fournier struggled and, these guys weren't playing well, then, yeah, obviously that would make no sense. But Fournier was playing well, and I think, again, something you mentioned, him defensively was, helping them a lot, which is shocking. I didn't think I'd ever find myself saying that. But Fournier was actually helping them defensively, and that's something Ivey just wasn't going to be able to do. He was not going to be a good defender on Rozier. He wasn't going to be making those stops. And also Fournier was having a good offensive game too. He had 4-3 in the game. So I know I don't have too big of an issue with not playing Ivey. I actually thought they were going to also sit Duren at the end of the game too, because I thought he was not having a good game, both ends of the floor, especially with decision making with the ball in his hands. But Stu had a 2-minute stretch where he just couldn't box out Bam. I think that kind of forced Monty's hand. So I don't know if it would have been just Ivey on there if Stu could have stayed a hold of Bam, but yeah, no, I don't really have a problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, Fournier really did play well. I don't think it's an indictment as him as all. I personally would have liked to see Ivey come back in more so than anything. I thought he made a lot of hustle plays in this game, and there was a part of me that just felt like it would have been nice to reward him a little bit, where he's doing some of those on the margin things, hustling for loose balls, offensive rebounds, those type of things. Ku, I want to come back to you real quick. I understand what it's like when you get dubbed the hater of a player or the lover of a player. What is it with the Ivey thoughts that you have? Have you been a little negative with Ivey, or let me ask this. This is the most fair way, I think, to ask Ku. What would you like to see more from Jaden Ivey, or what have you not seen that you would like to see that to invoke maybe a little more confidence?
I mean, I think what really started it for real was I think January or maybe end December, somewhere around there, I said that I didn't trust. I was losing faith that the core 4 guys could be a core 4 together.
Okay.
Or because Ivey wasn't a good enough shooter that I thought he was. In the offseason, when I wanted Ausar, and I spoke highly of just not Ausar, but Amen. But I feared Amen wouldn't be available at 5. The whole thought process I had was something that Troy and Ausar mentioned on draft night, was having multiple ball handlers is kind of where the league's heading. Having multiple guys that can attack gaps, create for others, etc., is where the league's heading. And I also said that Ivey, I projected him to be a pretty good shooter, and he and Cade both projected to be good shooters, that they could make it work, those two. And that I also, at that time, I believed Ausar could be a fine shooter down the line. I think I might have been. It looks like I might be wrong on that, but we'll see how it goes. Still have some belief with that. But either way, in the offseason, I thought Ivey was going to be a fine, pretty good shooter. Last year, I think he was in the 88th percentile on open catch and shoot threes. So I felt pretty good about it. And then this season, he's just taken a massive step back in that. And I think that's a key to making those 4 guys work. And if he's not going to be that level of shooter, you have to move on from somebody. Because I know a lot of fans think you can just bench one of the players. I'm not of that belief. I talked with Jackson Frank on my podcast a few weeks ago. If you have a core 4 guys, you want all 4 of those guys to be playing their best basketball when they play with each other. You want them to be making each other better when they're on the floor. You don't want to have to be, we can't play this guy together because they might not work. Okay, then why is that your core 4 then if they can't make each other better? If you're having to go through hoops just to avoid making each other worse, that shouldn't be what your core 4 is. So that's where it really started. And Ivey's just been a really inconsistent 3-point shooter. So I've been pretty vocal about that, which is why I to answer your question, I think that's where it comes from. Also, there was a point in this season where fans tried to turn this into a Cade Ivey season, and I'm going to be very adamantly strongly on the Cade over Ivey side. Yeah.
As you should be. As everybody should be.
Right. But I think maybe I get a little too vocal than people like. I don't think I get a little aggressive with it. So I was very aggressive with the Cade over Ivey stuff, plus all the other things. So I've been dubbed the Ivey hater. Even though I think Ivey is a good prospect. I think that's things you gotta I don't think people want to be really honest with the team and their young guys, because the young guys bring hope, and without hope, this team really has nothing because they don't have good wins either. So I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah, that's one of my least favorite things about NBA discourse is when you have criticism of a guy and they're just like, oh, well, you hate him. It's like, are we talking basketball or not? Like, why does it have to be like this personal thing? Let's wrap up segment 1, and then when we come back, we can actually resume this, and then we're going to get into one of Ku's favorite players, not his favorite player, Ausar Thompson. All right, we're back with segment 2. Ku, so I'm going to ask you this. It sounds like you came into the season still a believer in the Cade Ivey backcourt. And I don't want to put words into your mouth, but it sounds like you're starting to have doubts about that long term. Are you like significantly down on it now compared to where you were maybe 6 months ago?
Well, first I want to say that like this is why I like enjoy coming on here and talking with you guys about it, because on Lockdown Pistons, we're at 21 minutes. We'd have to be wrapping up like our third.
Yeah.
So, like,
I was like round 2. Now you can.
I hope you got a lot more, Ku. We got 40 minutes at least to go. So yeah, don't get rid of all of it now.
Right. So I get to like actually like go back and forth with you guys a little bit more and go for a little bit longer. So, but with the whole Cade and Ivey thing, I wouldn't say I'm just like I don't believe in them two working. I think they can work. It's just a matter of like, these are the questions I have. And I think the Pistons are going to answer them this offseason or before the next trade deadline. Do the core four play best when they're together? Like, do they make each other better when they're on the floor? Yes or no? The next question is I think that should be number 1. Number 2 should be, do they make Cade better? Do they help Cade? Because Cade should be at the top of the priority list, I think. Like, he should be the main, you should be wanting to make whatever makes him the best he can possibly be, should be what the goal is. Because as good as he goes is where as good as the Pistons go. So, again, it's not that I don't think they can work. Like the other night when they both had 30 plus, like that was probably the best they've looked together when they're both hitting shots. It's just a matter of how much is that actually going to happen. Ivey's not like a funny thing is that like coming out of college, a lot of people said with Ivey was he's an off-ball player. He's not, he can play off of Cade. He doesn't need the ball in his hands. And now we're 2 years in. And I feel like that whole discourse has flipped. Like now it's Ivey needs the ball in his hands more. Why is Cade doing so much? Well, like, the whole
that was the concern coming in, right? Like I remember us talking about this on the pod, Bryce. Like if he can't shoot and he's not a great passer, then what impact is he making next to Cade, right? It's all on defense at that point. Not to cut you off, Ku.
No, yeah. That's like that was the whole point of like going after Ivey, is that he can thrive off of Cade. But now it seems like everyone's like, oh, give him the ball more. Well, if that's the case, like why did you draft him? Like if that's what you believe, if you believe Ivey's best with the ball in his hands, that's just not going to happen next to Cade. Like that's sorry about it. And there's also I also just have a belief that I think next to Cade, I guess number 3 would be like if you have Cade, and I really am high on Ausar, which you guys said we're going to talk about. I have Ausar second, like in the core 4. I have him second on the tier list. If you have Cade and you have Ausar, and then you have Duren, that's a decent amount of playmaking. And I think you really need spacing and around those guys. And if Ivey's not going to be a deadly 3-point shooter, and also is going to have his lapses defensively, like he's never going to be a good defender either. It's just like I just have questions about it. Like, for example, I've had some of my listeners ask me, I'll ask you guys this. If you replace Ivey with just like a regular 3-and-D guy next to Cade, how much better do you think the team is right now? Not long-term, but like right now, if you just replaced them with like a regular 3-and-D guy that could shoot 38% from 3. Oh, how about this? Easy answer. Easy question here. Quinn Grimes making his shots.
No, I mean,
if you dropped him, that was just he's hitting his shots at 38% and he's doing everything else. Do you think this team is better right now playing or no?
Yeah, I mean, like the name this is like extreme because he's shooting so well. But like if you switch Grayson Allen for Jaden Ivey in the Pistons starting lineup, the Pistons would win. Here's like my one because I agree with everything you said. Like I understand this side of it, and I think a lot of people would agree too. I stand by they can play together, but then they also work because staggering them makes sense. And so like my counter would be if you replace Quentin Grimes or Grayson Allen, or I realize that's varying levels of 3-point shooting right now, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Well, then who's making the plays in the second unit? Because to me, it's not Marcus Sasser. And so I think this is why it makes sense is maybe I'm still a little bit more of a believer, Ku, that Ivey can play on the ball when Cade's off the floor, but I still think he can thrive in the 16, 18, 20 minutes, whatever it needs to be when they play on the floor together. I still have a little bit of belief in that. Maybe it's misguided belief. Like, I understand that, like, I'm okay with anybody who's out. I think the organization is out, Ku. I think, like, let me ask you this. Do you think Monty Williams is still in on the backcourt? Like, we're talking about whether we believe in it or not. I don't think Monty Williams is in on that backcourt. What do you think?
So I think it's clear. I mean, if you watch the season, I think you have to at least think that he has questions about it. Like, yeah. At the very least, he has some questions about it. I kind of want to like clarify what I'm saying too. I'm not saying that. I want to make it clear before people take my words and go crazy. I'm not saying the Pistons have to move on from Ivy or have to trade Ivy. The overall, what I'm getting at is if Ivy is not going to be that good of a shooter, and then also you're going to have those struggles defensively, those core four guys I don't think can work. So whether it's Ivy or Ausar or Duren, like if Ivy's not going to be a knockdown shooter like that, I don't think those four can work together. So you can choose Ivy to move off of. You can choose Ausar, Duren. I would move off of Ivy or Duren, but like it's not just Ivy. It's just if you want to make that core four work, in my opinion, because I don't see Ausar becoming a good shooter as quickly as I thought he would be. He's not. I don't think it's going to happen. And then Duren has his own lapses defensively, and he's not going to provide outside spacing. So that's where I'm at. It's not so much just kick Ivy out. Like I think it's if you want the core four to work, that has to happen. If it doesn't, you got to make some decisions.
Because if you like, let me ask you, if you put like, again, this is a wide range of guys, but somebody in the Chet Holmgren archetype at the 5 that spaces the floor from the 5, would you be a little more confident? Like, hey, now we can play Cade, Ivy, Fontecchio, Ausar, and a floor spacing 5, and that makes a little bit more sense, right? Like, that's
right. You have to. I feel like you have to choose. I think eventually the Pistons are going to have to choose if Ivy. I mean, what is he shooting? Like 32% from 3 this year. Like, and I think he was on. I just looked at it on Synergy. He's in like the 20 or the 11th percentile in spot up opportunities. That's like if he's going to be that, you have to pick. I think you're going to eventually have to pick between Ivy or Duren. In my opinion, I'm that high on Ausar. Maybe the Pistons aren't, but.
No, I mean, that makes sense, Omari, right? Like you may, if none of these guys shoot it as well as what we thought they might, because like we didn't think Ausar was going to shoot it great, but Omari, even you and I thought Ausar was going to shoot it better than this. Like it's going to take some time, even if he does get there. Duren doesn't look like it's going to get there, and Ivy's wildly inconsistent. So I think that's more than fair, Ku. It just comes down to then, Omari, do you think this Cade Ivy backcourt works best? Is it Ausar's defense that is what you want to hold on to? Because I think there's an argument that it's been so good that we see what happens when he's not there, or what Jalen Duren offers. So, Omari, your thoughts on that before we go straight into Ausar with Ku?
Yeah, I look at it as, so think back a couple of weeks ago when they beat the Brooklyn Nets, and I think Ivy had 34, Cade had 32, and that was like, I feel like the first game all season that they were both cooking at the same time. Like it seemed like they usually take turns, or like one guy will go off and one guy will have like a modest 16 and 8 or 6 or whatever. Like nothing that jumps off of the page. That was the first game where it seemed like they really kind of took over and like led them down the stretch, and Monty staggered them in the entire second half. And they have not had a game like that since. That was probably 5 games ago at this point, and like Ivy just has not been able to hit shots at all. Cade's been pretty steady, but like I've been thinking about that. Like, why are we not seeing these guys like pop off like that, like at the same time when they could both score? Like, is it just like what was the reason behind it? And I think if you think about it hard enough, I think the reason is just maybe they just don't play that well off of each other, right? Like maybe it just hasn't happened because their games, and some of that's like okay, like Ivy was coming off the bench for like the first 4th of the season, somewhere around that. So that's part of it. Like there's some other things interrupting that, but overall, we just haven't seen that happen. So I think it's pretty simple. Like whoever plays next to Cade has to counter Cade's weaknesses. Like they have to be able to play good defense. They have to be able to space the floor. And then Ivy, like his speed and everything, those things really should be the cherry on top. But it seems like the only thing this season he's really done consistently well is get to the rim. He's finished a bit better, but beyond that, you're still waiting for those other elements of his game to come together. So I'm not out on that backcourt. Like I still think it could work out. Like I just think it would really take, if it's not going to be Ivy off ball, then I think it's got to be Cade. But somebody's got to really embrace doing the off ball stuff. And so far, we haven't seen that happen. Ku, I'm going to go back. You mentioned you had Ausar second on your core 4 list, and you said that after acknowledging that you don't think Ausar will ever be a good shooter, but he's still number 2 on your core 4 list. Why is that?
So this is the thought process I go with it. I would not, with that thought process, I'm moving off of one of the core 4 eventually. I'll just go ahead and say this. Like I've been hinting at it a little bit on my podcast. I'll go ahead and just say it now. Like if I was the GM, I would eventually be moving off of one of these guys, at least one of them, maybe even 2. I'd be moving off one of these guys eventually. Maybe this offseason, maybe right before the trade deadline next year. I'd be moving off one of them. And I'm keeping Ausar because I think Ausar has legit 2-way impact in his future of being a real impact player on both ends of the floor. And I think the problem is it's much like Omari, when I had you on the podcast, I talked about Ausar, Stu, and Duren. You can have 2. When you have 3, that's when it becomes a problem. Like you can have one of them. Like you can have Ausar, but when you have Ausar and then Ivy shooting 32%, then Duren's not shooting, and then Isaiah Stewart's hitting shots, but the defense isn't really respecting it, and you can't have all of that happening at once. So I think Ausar, his ceiling, I think the thing is, I think I told Bryce this before too in the offseason, is that I think Ausar, even if he doesn't get a good 3-point shot, his ceiling is incredibly high. Like I think if he gets a good 3-point shot, then you're talking like crazy stuff. Like even without a 3-point shot, to be honest, I'd like to hear from you guys. I think Ausar, his ball handling is more a priority this offseason. I think he needs to improve his ball handling more.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, like, I think if he improves his ball handling, is able to get to his spots, you can trust him to run secondary playmaking like I thought he could be a secondary ball handler. You can have Ausar then be the secondary ball handler. And actually, that guy is an all-league defensive player who is a freak athlete, can finish around the basket, and do all. And I think he's more versatile offensively too, where you can put him in the dunker spot, you can run him screen and roll.
Yeah, like he would truly be positionless in that aspect. Like I was going to say, next to Duren, he's more of a 4, and I think it kind of hurts him that they don't have a floor spacing 5 on the roster. But yeah,
and that's why.
But if he's in the Ivy row and he does everything, then yeah.
Muscala and Gallinari, the lines with those two when they were together, their net ratings off the charts.
It's like insane.
I looked at that the other day. It's like
plus 17 or something. Like,
yeah, we don't have to get into that, Ku. Yeah, keep cooking on Ausar because we can't go down the Muscala Gallo waved, that track of things. Here's real quick, Ku. Give me because all he has to do is be able to knock down corner threes too. In my opinion, he doesn't need to be able to do it off the bat. Off the bounce would be good, right? Because then if he's going to operate ball screens, you want people to have to go over the top. But I don't need him taking ones in transition at the top of the key. Like just knock down corner threes at a respectable rate. And then like he can attack closeouts and do everything else.
Yeah. I just think that Ausar, his game, I think he can be more impactful on the game than the other two so far, like eventually in his career. Like that's just where I'm at with it. I think his defense is that good. And like, the thought process I have with the other two, so like with Duren, I mean, Omari, me and you talked about this last week. Duren, like I don't need all that other ball handling stuff out of my 5 when I have Cade. If you were to just swap Duren with like a Clint Capella, like a guy who just sets screens, rolls to the basket, catches lobs, and then can protect the rim, like the team's better with that. Like, is the offensive stuff cool to see from Duren? Absolutely. Is him improving his footwork and all that stuff, having that wrinkle to his game? Absolutely. But do I need that stuff out of my 5? Is that like a top priority? Not really. Like if I have a 5, I much would rather them be a rim protector on defense or someone who can anchor your defense, set good screens offensively, roll to the rim, be a lob threat, and just make the right pass. Which, if you want me to be honest, Duren has been kind of frustrating me lately because he isn't making those same offensive reads passing wise as of late, in my opinion. But that's my problem with Duren. That's why I have him above Duren. And with Ivy, if Ivy's going to be an inconsistent shooter, and now people are questioning whether, hey, can Ivy and Cade fit together? Then you add on to the fact that I just don't think Ivy's ever even going to be a below average defender. Like all of that is just too much for me to like. That's too many questions for me. Whereas with Ausar, I think I'm going to get an all-league defender. I truly believe in his playmaking. I think his vision is incredible. He's a freak athlete. He makes some incredible plays around the rim. And I think eventually, whether it's with Monty or someone else, he's a really versatile player without having a 3-point shot. Like he can be used in so many different ways in your half court while also locking up the best player on the other end. So that's why I'm so high on Ausar versus the other two.
Cool. I was going to disagree, but I think you talked me into it. Bryce, I'll leave it to you.
No, I was just going to say, like, Ausar can make sense right now without the jumper if you had a floor spacing 5. Like, I think this is why that archetype of a 5-man has become my favorite thing, is because we see what it does for the Oklahoma City offense, right? Like, yes, SGA is awesome and Jalen Williams is awesome. Like, Chet unlocks that offense because he's a 5-man that spaces the floor and can do those things. So I think that's where it unlocks stuff. And like, that's not an indictment of Duren. I think it just makes everything else so much easier. I will say, like, watching Ausar's I thought Ausar burst onto the scene. I thought it was awesome to start the year. I thought he hit a little bit of a rookie wall, but there was a few game stretch before whatever the medical stuff is going on where I thought his defense was incredible. It was Mikal Bridges and somebody else in back-to-back games. And then he's gone all of a sudden. Oh, it was Luka. It was Mikal Bridges, the first quarter against Luka. And listen, I think Fontecchio tries as hard as he possibly can defensively, but he just doesn't have the physical tools. And you've been able to see that, like, without Ausar, there's a certain level of defense. You brought it up. Like, the handle's what makes me a little bit nervous, Ku, because I thought what he was going to be able to come in and do was grab and go, attack off the bounce, not turn it over, make really good reads. That's probably been the more disappointing part for me. Like with Ausar, is I knew he was going to struggle to shoot, even if it is pretty bad. I actually thought the ball handling and the passing and all of that stuff was a little better than what we've seen. Do you feel the same way? Like, or is it kind of on par with what you thought?
I think it all boils down to his ball handling. I think you still see his passing and short roll and coming baseline, like all that. I think you still see his passing pop and his vision pop. I think it just boils down to the ball handling. I do think the ball handling has been a little bit weaker than I thought it would be. A lot of people talked about how that was something he needed to improve on pre-draft. I didn't expect it to be. I mean, I talked with him literally like 4 days ago about this, which was super cool for me to be able to do. I asked him about whether he thinks he can be a secondary ball handler for this team this season. And he talked about getting more opportunities in transition and the guys kind of encouraging him to try to do a little bit more in the open court, whereas in the half court. I think his handle is the biggest part to improve in his game. And I think if he does that, that will unlock and make it's the same thing with his brother too. Like his brother's doing the same thing in Houston. Like you've seen if they can just get their handle tighter, everything else, their drives would be a lot better. Finishing around the rim would get better. Their passing, their vision would really pop more off the screen. So, yeah, I think the ball handling is definitely where he needs to improve on. That's where I've probably been. Actually, let me not lie. The three-point shot has been my most disappointing part. But it's the ball handling is a little bit more behind than I thought it was.
Because the issue is that teams don't respect the shot or the drive. You know, you have teams that essentially just completely ignore them on the perimeter. And I feel like this is such a divisive topic for some reason, the extent that Ausar's poor shooting and, but the handle as well kind of hurts the offense. But there are lineups where it completely sinks everything. And, I know we're not going to talk about Muscala, but this roster is just not really built for Ausar to mesh in every lineup, which if you have sufficient spacing, he can fit in any lineup. Like there's really no reason why he can't. It's just because his roster is not really built for him to be able to do that. But yeah, the issue now is that teams don't respect the shot or the handle. And if he could at least, he want to attack a closeout, like they're not going to close out. But if he could at least, kind of just get past that second layer of defense with more consistency, improve his left hand, all that, then that does unlock a lot. At that point, at least he's more like an Andre Iguodala type, right? And we know that Iguodala, like prime Iggy in today's game, would be like a really great player as he was back then. So
okay, I have one more thing, Omari, then we'll go to the final thing, and I'll ask the questions. So we've talked about, and I think we would all agree to an extent that this core four may not work, at least not as a true core four where they're all starting. And if they're not all starting, is it truly a core four, right? Like we had Laz on, and Laz is like, I think this is an overblown kind of label anyway. But, people will say then, like somebody brought up Keegan Murray earlier, and I want to remind people, like, the Pistons didn't have the opportunity to draft Keegan Murray. He literally went the pick before them. I just looked up, like Benedict Mathurin only shoots 34% from three. Shaedon Sharpe only shoots 35% from three. So my question, Ku, and then to you, Omari, is do you have a major issue with how they assembled the team, or do you think it's going to be okay? Like if they have to trade, let's say, Ivy and Duren to make this team make more sense, are you okay with that? Assuming we trust Troy Weaver or whoever makes that decision to make the right decision. Like, do you think it's a completely flawed way of building a roster by just assembling the talent you think is best and then moving those pieces if necessary because things don't work out?
I think it's been a failure roster construction wise for sure, and it's not just like the core four guys that we're talking about with Cade, Ivey, Ausar, Duren. Like there's lineups where those guys have worked. Like that lineup with Fontecchio, I've been screaming it from the mountaintops. Like that lineup has like 113 minutes played since the deadline. They have like a plus 4.1 net rating, I think it is, somewhere around there. It's like that lineup works. I think the biggest problem has been what they did around those four guys. Like the roster before the trade deadline was absolutely horrible, and it put all of them in the worst positions possible. It made it really like the fact that they had no one on the team that could play defense and shoot threes. It was either you shot threes, you couldn't play D, or you played D, you couldn't shoot threes. It was a very bad roster assembled. So that's the biggest problem I have. But yeah, I think again, like I said earlier in the podcast, and that's why like I try to avoid talking about this on my podcast because I know it upsets people. But like the thing with a rebuilding team is that, especially with a team that has gone this south in year 4, all fans have is hope. And if you talk bad about the young guys, you're taking away that hope. So if you take away that hope, then they have nothing, and now they want to be pissed at everybody. So it's hard to have like legit conversations about, hey, does Ivy fit? Does Duren, is that the right? Because if you do that, everyone's just mad. It's like, oh, well, that's all we got. If those 4 guys ain't going to be good, what's going to happen? So it's just, I try to avoid talking about those 4 guys. But around them, yeah, I think the roster construction has been poor before the trade deadline, yeah.
I'll be quick because we got to close out this segment. But that's the point I was going to make is that do the core guys fit well? Like, not really. I don't think that's an issue. I think it's fine to take the best player, whoever you think the best player is there, and you can always trade guys later on. Like, I don't think that's uncommon or a sign of a failed a sign of a failed rebuild. You'd like to just draft best player available because that's how you end up with Luke Kennard over Donovan Mitchell. Like, I know somebody just flinched when I said that. But yeah, it's just the role players around them that just don't fit. I mean, like, it still blows my mind that they came into the season with Jalen Duren, Marvin Bagley, and James Wiseman, and those were the centers. They all did the same thing to varying extents. Like, players were not put in positions to succeed. And I think if you know that your young players, your young core, they all struggle with shooting to some extent. Whether you're a non-shooter like 2 of them, inconsistent like Ivy, or just Cade, it's just getting more consistent with it. Like, that should have been priority number 1, was bringing in more shooting, and that did not happen. So again, they're probably going to part with some of these guys as soon as this offseason, and I think that's just a normal part of rebuilding. You retool as you go. But yeah, at this point, I think it's fair.
Okay, we're going to go to a break, and then we're going to play real or fad whenever we come back. So Ku and Omari, I'll kind of lead this. I'll give answers if I feel like it. Wes says I'm supposed to, but I'll decide in the moment. And we're going to decide if these trends will continue like into next season and beyond, or if it's just a fad. So I'll read those off, let you guys give your answers. Omari will do that after this short break.
All right, we are back with segment 3. Man, we haven't played a game on this pod.
I know, right?
Like, we got to start playing games more. Yeah, so we're doing real or fad. Just looking at different trends and if they're real or if they're fads. It's right there in the title.
Yeah. All right. So these are the following trends. I think a lot of these are post All-Star break. In general, there's a couple that I think the first one isn't. So Ku, I'm just going to start with you because you're the guest, and we want to make sure we get your thoughts on this. So, real or fad, and this is just for this one, does it continue overall, like throughout the rest of his career? And we're going to start with Cade Cunningham's increased scoring efficiency. So this year he's been a little bit better in terms of his stats across the board. I was going to read them off for you real quick. So field goal percentage is up almost 30%. 3-point percentage is up like, what is that? 6 or 8% from last year. So what are your thoughts on Cade Cunningham's scoring efficiency?
Yeah, I think it's real. I think he's going to continue to get more efficient. I think you saw his efficiency really jump after they stopped starting Killian Hayes next to him and after game 12. So from game 12 and on, he's been pretty efficient from 3 at the rim. Pull-up threes, I believe he's been shooting 38% since game 12. So like over the last 44 games, he's shooting 46% from the field, 37.5% from deep, 87% from the free throw line. It's like a true shooting percentage of like 56, 57%. So I think it really is just as simple as like, it's just really confusing me, like why the Pistons seem to struggle with building around Cade, because it really should be just so easy, just like put shooting around him and he'll be straight. Like it just, I don't really get like why it's so hard. But yeah, once he started to get like spacing around him, he's been efficient. He's been putting up a lot of numbers. He's shooting better from deep. So yeah, I think it's real.
Real quick, I 3% better from the field, not 30. That would have been an insane jump.
I was going to ask about that. Like I assumed it wasn't 30. I was a little confused.
Yeah, it's spring break over here, man. Like ease up a little bit. So yeah, 3% from the field, 7.5% from three. Free throw percentage has always been good. It's up a little bit, and he's like 5%. You brought up true shooting, Ku. He's actually up like 5% in his true shooting as well. So Omari, is this real or a fad with Cade Cunningham's scoring efficiency?
Quick aside before I forget, you mentioned spring break. How was your staycation last week?
It was awesome. Like we didn't have kids for 3 days. And so we actually watched some movies. We watched Argyle. We watched a Netflix, and then we watched a really, really bad movie that I was pissed that we watched. So,
what movie?
The Anatomy of a Fall. It's
okay. I don't know about that one.
Yeah, it was a waste of 2.5 hours. Very frustrated.
All right. I'm going to go with real. I just pulled it up. I checked the other day. Like, I know he's missed a few threes since then, but basically his last 38 games since November 30th. So you cut off the first 18, 2/3 of the season, basically. He's averaging 22.5 points. He's shooting 47.3% overall, 36.8% from three, 85 at the line, 7.8 assists, 3 turnovers. He's been doing this since the very last game of November, and that's with a lot of roster turnover, like all sorts of stuff that's been going on this season. He's been really consistent, for going on December, January, like 4 months now. Like, I think that's real. Like, I don't think he's doing anything that can't be sustained. And if anything, he still has another tier or two to get to when you factor in the improvement he could have on defense, and then also just shooting as well. I think we can look at his shooting as of late. Like, could he crack 40% for a whole year? Like, I think it's possible for him. So I'm going to go with real.
All right, we're going to go to a guy we spent a lot of this pod talking about. That is Jaden Ivey. I will tell you, like, I do not like this stat for him. I've written about it in my like raw notes on the Substack, like the last 4 or 5 games. I do not like where this trend has gone recently. So Ku, Jaden Ivey taking more than 5 3-point attempts per game since the All-Star break. Do you think that continues into next year throughout the rest of his career, or do you think that's been a fad here since the All-Star break?
Is he playing along with the core 4, or?
Okay, we'll ask it one way. Jaden Ivey stays in Detroit. Does it continue? Is that real, or is that a fad?
If he continues to play with Cade, Ausar, Duren, yes, it's real, because he's going to have to get threes. You're going to have to get volume threes up at the end of the day. Like, you need someone who's going to get threes up. You're going to lose the math game at a certain point. So yeah, I think that it's real in that point. If they try to change the roster up a little bit, if they try to change his role around, put the ball in his hands a little bit more, no, I think it goes down. But yeah, I think he's definitely going to, you said 5 attempts, right?
Yeah.
No, yeah, I definitely think that's probably going to be higher than 5, as long as because that's like really his role, to be honest. Like, he needs to, like, when guys are playing hard at the nail on Cade, he's the first pass right there. Like, he's going to be taking a lot of threes, I think. Do you, real quick, Omari, I want to go, do you think he would be better in another team then? Like, is your questions around Jaden Ivey the archetype in general, like of this like off-ball player who doesn't necessarily space the floor? Do you think he can just be really good on the ball, just doesn't fit with Cade, or is it just like that archetype in general? I have questions about him as a player and archetype in general. Fair. Okay. No. All right. Omari, 5 attempts from 3 a game for Jaden Ivey moving forward.
That's a really good over-under, because he's already been close to 5 in his career. I think he was 4.7 as a rookie, 4.6 this season. Yeah, those are the numbers. So he's already kind of flirted with that. I'm going to go real. Like, I think that's just a shot that's going to continue to be part of his diet, regardless of where he is. Like, I just think he's going to be a guy that takes threes. He works hard on that shot, and he's not going to just some of the threes he takes, it just seems like a shot he enjoys taking. So I just think strictly off of vibes, honestly. Like, I don't know. Ku's answer was a bit more analytical than mine. He just gives me the vibe of a guy that's going to keep shooting. That's all I got for that one.
So I pulled up some stats during the last game with what he had done from 3. So 7 per game over his last 8. And in 4 of those 8 games, he had attempted 9. And this was before the game on Sunday. So like he had really, really like post All-Star break, he's got a lot up. I'm going to put this up here, Ku, just because I know that he's joking here, but just I got to put this up just because I know that's your guy and he's just giving you a hard time. So
Sham has to stop trolling at some point. Like he just
Sham is the only Pistons Twitter troll that I like respect and love and have no problem with, because I know he does it from a place of like good intentions and fun, where like maybe others are like legit trying to do it. So I know he's just having fun with it. So all right, let's go to we haven't talked a ton about Jalen Duren. We talked a little bit about it. Jalen Duren is averaging 2.6 turnovers per game since the All-Star break. Ku, is Jalen Duren's turnovers something he gets under control? So is this a fad, or is this something he's actually going to have issues with moving forward? Is this something real with Jalen Duren?
This is such a tough question. Like to say real.
Yeah.
This is like,
Wes is good at this stuff.
I don't know how to answer this because.
Okay, just start with the number, Ku. 2.5. Let's go 2.6. Do you think over the next 2-3 years he averages more or less than that? Let's just start with that, and then I'll ask a more general question next.
I'd hope not.
That's not an answer.
God. I have to say fad. I'm just going to hope and say fad, even though like the way he's been playing lately and some of the reads and decisions he's been making have been really concerning me for like the last 30 games. So
okay. So in general, real or fad, you have concerns about Jalen Duren's turnover issues.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of the year when people started to see him do a little bit more of the ball in his hands, it was like, oh, this is cool. And then like around game 20, all of a sudden he stopped making the kickouts. All of a sudden he stopped making the short roll reads. And now he's getting offensive rebounds and he's not kicking the ball back out and just trying to force it. Like now you're starting to see more and more of that stuff happen. So yeah, I have a little bit of concerns about that. But 2.5, Mike, that's a lot for a guy that's not supposed to have that much of usage. So like, no, I'm gonna go fad.
All right, Omari, real or fad for Jalen Duren, 2.6 turnovers?
I think it's real. And again, like it's a bit odd that it's been that high because he does not, like a lot of his assists come from like just the high screening. Like Ku mentioned earlier, I feel like he hasn't been kicking out to shooters as often. So I think some of that's just him like mishandling the ball and just making bad reads. But I also think bigs like who try to make plays like Duren to be more turnover prone anyway. Like you have guys who are just truly see the floor like a point guard, like a Jokic or a Sabonis, those types of guys. But I'm looking at it now. Like, I mean, Embiid's like he's 5.7 assists, 3.7 turnovers. Randall's averaging 3.5. Sabonis is averaging 3.5. Like Karl Anthony Towns, he's like 3 assists, 2.8 turnovers. Şengün's averaging 2.6. Like the ball more than Duren, so it's not quite comparable. But I just think with Duren's type of game, he's just always going to be a guy who's probably a bit on the higher end, and I just think that's probably just a consequence of him being I don't think he's going to be like a Jokic level, like it's Jokic obviously, but I do think Duren will probably be more in like that Şengün, like Randall range where you're comfortable with them handling the ball and making plays, but they're not going to have like a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. It's going to be like 4 to 2.5 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we can get more of the upside with this, it would be a little more understandable. I was super high on him being able to do this stuff, and it hasn't quite, and he's very young, it hasn't quite developed the way I thought. Ku, it looks like you had something you wanted to add in real quick.
Yeah, I just want to quickly say that if he does continue to average like 2.5 turnovers with his usage rate, like how much usage he's asked to do, and he's not consistently making those reads anymore, like that becomes a serious issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he has to be able to do that. He has to have the high-end outcomes and the production from it as well. All right, we have 2 more, and then we'll get you out of here. Ausar is shooting 28% from 3 since the All-Star break. Is that real or a fad over the next 2-3 seasons for Ausar's three-point shooting?
Real. That is 28% was where I expected him to be coming into the year. Like that, he hovered around there at OTE. And especially at the end of the year, that's why I was so high on him as a prospect. Because at the end of OTE season, I talked with him about this a few days ago. At the end of the OTE season and the playoffs, he was hitting self-created threes too, like step-back threes, sidestep threes. And he was shooting like 36, 37% on those. Yeah. So it's confused me how he shot so bad to start this year because they shot from the NBA line at OTE. So it's just like it's kind of confused me. So 28%, yeah, I think that's where I expect him to be this season.
We talked about it. Like, I don't know, like maybe since you spoke to him, it'd be interesting if he gave perspective or if what you guys talked about, like if you're allowed to say, but we feel like, or I felt like Wes is the one that brought this up. Actually, is like the 8 to 10 foot pull-up jumper looks so smooth and rhythmic. And I think they like almost had him shooting too much of a set shot on his 3-point shot, like where he wasn't jumping at all. And my argument, and again, I'm stealing this from Wes just a little bit, so credit to him, but let him be an athlete. Like let him jump as high as he wants on that 3-point shot and just let his natural athleticism kind of take over on that shot. Did you get to ask him about that at all? Like where he's at with it, confidence wise, mechanically, any of that stuff? Now, listen, if you have like an interview coming out, I don't want you to spoil anything like here, but
no, I put the interview out on my page like 2 days.
Okay, all right. So
3 days ago, I think. So
we'll put that in the chat. You guys go and check that out.
He said that. So I asked him directly about self-created threes. Is that something he thinks he has in him? Like, what about that self-creation? Because I told him that was something that like I thought he had in his game coming out of OTE, and he said, yeah, it's something he still thinks is in his game. It's something that he said that the more confidence he started to have in his 3-point shot throughout the season, the more he's been willing to bring out some of that stuff in his game. He talked about how he had that one self-created 3 against Cleveland a few days ago, that sidestep 3. He missed it. But he thinks that that's something he's going to continue to eventually bring out of his game as he gets more confident as the season goes along. I think it really is just a matter of his confidence, because at the beginning of the year, he was just like, he had just completely lost confidence in it. So, yeah, I think it's something he said it's something he still works on and something he plans on bringing out. So we'll see.
All right. Omari, 28% real or fad for Ausar Thompson's 3-point percentage?
Within the next few seasons?
Yeah, next 2 or 3 seasons.
Man, I have to go fat right now. I got to see a little bit more, but I say that I tweeted this the other week, and you guys got to touch on it too. Like, Ausar's jumper, like inside the free throw line, is like I won't say money, but he shoots it at a significantly better rate, and that includes like the turnaround, like his touch within like 13 feet is like really good. As soon as you get to the free throw line, it just falls off a cliff. Like he's shooting 50% at the line this year, but his percentages like within that are like fine. So he has touch. And then when you watch him shoot, you can tell he's thinking about all the steps. He's thinking about his form. Like he shoots like he's thinking about it. And we kind of talked about this with last week. And, I just kind of wondered, like, what if he just threw all that out the window, right? Like he's not thinking about any of that. Just tell him, like, just go out there and shoot. Like, don't think too hard about it. Like, just shoot. Whatever feels comfortable, do it. Don't worry about having everything in picture perfect form. Just him loosening up could help. So it's like, I do think he can crack 28% from 3. I could just see this being like an ongoing thing. Like if we're talking about him doing it for the next 2 seasons, like I don't know. But if we're talking about like year 5 or 6, I could see it then.
Yeah, I mean he's 54% between 3 and 10 feet on the year, and that is 28% of his attempts. So like there's some real sample there with that shot. Okay, last one here. This is the team as a whole. So this one will be really fun. The Pistons are currently winning, and Wes promises me this is updated after today's game, post All-Star break, at a 33% rate. That would put them on pace for 27 wins in an entire season. Let's just say next year. Do the Pistons win 27 or more games next year? Is this a real or fad, Q?
If they don't win, if they're not on a 27.
No, hold up. Let me save you here. Don't say something crazy.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
If they are not on a 27-game win pace next year, everything needs to be cleared out like instantly. So I'm gonna say real, because if it's not real, everything needs to change. There's no way in year 5 you can't be on a 27. That still would be. Where would 27 get you? Like 14th in the East, like 13?
Somewhere around that.
It would have to be close. Like if you. Let me pull up the standings right now. So
like
in the
East, you can't be at 27 in year 5. Like you might gotta start a whole thing over.
So everybody already has 29 except for the bottom 5. Brooklyn's at 26. Toronto's at 23. So Brooklyn gets there. Toronto maybe. In the West, only Memphis, Portland, and San Antonio don't have 27. So my thing would be like, I think Troy's either learned enough lessons about roster building that it's going to be better, even if it's not what we all want, or it's going to be somebody new making the decisions, and then hopefully they're able to make the right one. So, Omari, 27 win pace next year for the Pistons, real or fad?
I'm going to say real, only because I think the team mostly as constructed now. Like if you had this team from day one, you're probably they have 12 wins now. Like I don't want to double that, but like it's more than 12, right? Like maybe you're in like the 21, 22 range. So can they add 5 wins over the offseason with all their cap space? I would hope so.
And another pick, and I mean it's
like you have all the resources you could possibly want.
It really does. It really does. Okay, so speaking of though, like coming into the year was like, now listen, I think we'd all agree that maybe they mismanaged Bojan. Like I know you were at the forefront of this, Ku, like, so shout out to you for that. But like Bojan, Burks, Monte Morris are all theoretically floor spacers. Now they don't play defense, but they were all floor. Is it kind of crazy to you? Like, Ku, you were the first one that ever said this to me, that fans overvalue their own players. Were we even overvaluing those guys, speaking, like looking now at like what those guys are doing on their new teams? Because like, I don't see a lot of love for especially those two guys with the Knicks. Like it seems like maybe we were overvaluing them even more than like, even knowing they were too old for this team, we were still overvaluing what they were doing.
No, yeah, I think they were overvalued a little bit. And then also I think they were overvalued. And then I also think the other problem was, which is something I think I had Bryce on an episode. I think I had Omari on an episode this offseason, said the same thing to you guys. Like they added shooting, but did they add shooting that could be like together in theoretical lineups? Like, you had like Joe Harris and Bojan. Like, are you ever going to throw a lineup out there of Cade,
They can't
Ivy?
play together.
No,
You can't. Like, it's not going to happen. So like, technically, I guess you added shooting, but it's not actual. Like, you're not actually adding functional lineups because you can't. If you played those guys together, you're getting blitzed by like 40. Like, it's just not going to happen. So
Fournier's been the best defender of all those guys, right or wrong.
I mean, well, he hasn't had to play, so maybe he has some legs on him.
Like every game I write in my notes, man, Fournier's making crazy rotations. Man, Fournier's like, what? I didn't expect this guy to play any defense on a 12-win Pistons team. Like, what is going on? Okay, for real, this last one, real or fake? We all love Simone Fontecchio. That's real for me. Ku?
Absolutely real.
Omari?
He's endeared himself, I think, faster than any Pistons mid-season trade acquisition since I don't know when.
Sheed?
That should let you know how.
I was going to say Blake, but yeah.
Oh, Blake, yeah, sure.
That should let you know how badly this team has needed a 3-and-D guy.
Oh, my
like
God.
Simone Fontecchio joins and everyone's just head over heels.
And he's not even that good defensively. He just tries really hard, has some good size, and is the right spot. All right, Ku, you were the man. We appreciate you so much for coming on, talking shop with us. Let everybody know, like I'm sure everybody does know, I dropped it in the comments, his interview with Ausar Thompson, so you guys can go check that out. Let everybody know where they can find all of your podcasts, your work, everything you got going on, so they can tune in.
You guys can follow me over on Twitter at Ku Khahil, or you guys can listen to the podcast Locked On Pistons over at YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 8,000. We're like 50 away, so
congrats.
Hit that. Or you guys can listen to us on any podcast platform. So appreciate you guys having me. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
No doubt.
Yeah, no doubt. Cool. I'm glad we got you on. You've had us on Locked On, and it was only a matter of time before we finally joined forces, and we'll make it happen again, certainly soon as well. So
absolutely.
Thanks everybody again who tuned in, and big thanks as always to our editor Robert Chan, our editor-in-chief Nicole Avery Nichols, our executive producer Arsnet Delgado, and our sports editor Kirkland Crawford. And big shout out to Wes as always, and we'll talk to you all next week.